Welcome back to our news bulletin. We start from Pakistan, which is celebrating the first anniversary of Surprise Day, commemorating its Air Force's victory over India on February 27th last year. Responding to Indian Air Force's aggression, Pakistan downed 2 fighter jets and arrested Wing Commander Abhinandan Varthaman. Air Chief Marshal Mujahid Anwar Khan addressed a special ceremony by Pakistan Air Force held in Islamabad. Anwar Khan said, last year on this day, Air Force showed its superiority and lethality over India. He said, Pakistan is a peace-loving country, but will not tolerate any misadventure against its sovereignty.
Prior to aggression last year, our national leadership had made it amply clear that no misadventure against Pakistan would ever go unresponded. Today, I reiterate that commitment and caution. To respond to the aggressor was our compulsion, but measured and calibrated response was entirely our choice. Make no mistake, PF, when responds to irresponsible act, we may not always exercise restraint.
It has been 1 year since Pakistan shot down 2 Indian military jets and captured a pilot in a dogfight over Azad Jammu and Kashmir. The aerial attacks across the line of control were the first since the 1971 Indo-Pak War. More in this report.
In February last year, 40 Indian troops were killed in an attack in occupied Kashmir's Pulwama district. The attack was carried out by a Kashmiri citizen, but India jumped the gun and blamed Pakistan for the incident. Pakistan's civilian and military leadership vehemently denied the Indian propaganda, terming the attack a false flag operation. Facing immense domestic pressure, India launched airstrikes in the town of Balakot in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Pakistan's Air Force retaliated to the violation immediately, forcing IAF fighter planes to drop their payloads early. New Delhi claimed it targeted a terrorist training camp, but evidence showed its bombs only damaged a few trees. In the ensuing air battle, the PAF jets shot down 2 fighter jets and captured one of their pilots. However, Pakistan returned Indian pilot Abhinandan Varthaman as a peace gesture. But India continued to threaten the regional peace by revoking Kashmir's special status and violating the ceasefire along the LOC repeatedly. The situation between the two countries is still tense as Kashmiris are forced to live under an inhumane Indian curfew. Islamabad has repeatedly called on the international community to help stop the conflict from turning into an all-out war.
The Pakistan Army has held a media briefing marking the anniversary of Operation Swift Retort, which was Pakistan's befitting response to India's bombing of the town of Balakot this time last year. More in this report by our correspondent Sumaira Khan.
The operation resulted in the downing of 2 Indian fighter jets and the capture of the Indian Air Force's Wing Commander Abhinandan Varthaman. Today, a monument has been built where Abhinandan's jet crashed and remains open to the public and international media. The Pakistan Army organized a tour of the site where they explained how they captured the pilot.
On 27 Feb 19, we observed intense aerial activity on the skies of our sector. Meanwhile, we just saw a jet coming down like a rock after an explosion, followed by a parachute which was descending downwards. So my commanding officer ordered me to move a QRF immediately and secure the site.
In an effort to maintain regional peace, Abhinandan was returned to India as a gesture of goodwill. But before that, the Pakistan Army nursed his injuries and gave him a taste of some Pakistani tea.
The QRF team brought the injured pilot to battalion headquarters where I was the medical officer. He was in a state of shock due to the fear, and his heart rate was fast, and he had lacerations on his face, cheeks, and on his head, and he was bleeding from the nose and from the face.
Unfortunately, tensions between Pakistan and India have remained high since the incident, with frequent ceasefire violations from India. The situation has deteriorated since 5th August 2019, when India illegally annexed occupied Kashmir. 1 year after India's unprovoked aggression against Pakistan, which was turned down by Pakistan's armed forces with full force, Pakistan still reiterates its firm resolve to give peace another chance and said that its hope and efforts to give peace another chance should not be taken as act of cowardness. Reporting for Indus News, Sumaira Khan, Hura Village, line of control.
The Pakistan Air Force has unveiled all 4 missiles recovered from an Indian jet downed in February last year for violating the country's airspace. More in this report.
The Pakistan Air Force displayed the wreckage of the Indian Air Force's MiG-21 Bison, which was shot down by a Pakistani fighter jet. In a media briefing, Pakistan Air Force showcased the MiG-21 equipped with 4 missiles. The missiles were never fired, contradicting the Indian claim of shooting down Pakistan's F-16 warplane. Indian Wing Commander Abhinandan Varthaman, who was flying the jet, ejected himself and was captured by Pakistan. The Indian pilot praised the Pakistan Army for saving him from the locals just after his landing in Azad Kashmir.
I would like to put this on record, and I will not change my statement if I go back to my country also. The officers of the Pakistani Army have looked after me very well. They are thorough gentlemen, starting from the captain who rescued me from the mob and from his Jawan, from his soldiers, and thereafter the officers into the unit which I was taken to. Okay. This is what I would expect my army to behave as, and I am very impressed by the Pakistani Army.
Pakistan released the Indian Wing Commander as a gesture of peace. Pakistan's military wing released Abhinandan's another video statement before his release.
Pakistani Army jo hai wo bahut hi professional.
The Pakistan Army is a very special service. I see peace in it. I've spent time with the Pakistan Army. I'm impressed. Indian media exaggerates a lot. It always gives ear to small things, adding fire and spices to it.
मिर्च लगा के बोलते हैं वो, उसमें लोग बहकावे में आ जाते हैं.
The release of Indian Wing Commander Abhinandan as a peace gesture was highly appreciated worldwide.
For more on this, we are joined by Major General retired Ejaz Awan. Thank you for your time. Now, Mr. Awan, Pakistanis are celebrating 27th February as Surprise Day to mark victory in last year's air skirmish between India and Pakistan. First of all, tell us how important is 27th February in Pakistan's history?
Well, thank you, Kiran. I would say it's a very important day from 2 angles. One, that India was trying to establish a new normal under the overhang of nuclear overhang, and they thought they would strike across international border for the target of their own choosing, though without any logic, without any reason. They were unable to give any evidence of Pakistan's involvement in Pulwama, yet they undertook this adventure or misadventure, and they came to strike. They thought they are going to get away with it, and Pakistan will not respond. So that myth has been allayed, and we conveyed it to them, we conveyed it to the world, that if, no matter how big the enemy is, if they try to strike Pakistan mainland, we will strike back and we will not have any holds barred. This is one thing. Second, nuclear overhang does not mean that the escalation would immediately dump to that escalation ladder and we are going to have a large-sized conflict. The response had to be befitting and it had to be well-scaled, well-measured response, and we did give that response. May I quote an anecdote here, an incident that took place. At that time's Chairman Joint Chief, General Zubair Hayat, Pakistan Army Chairman Joint Chief, he did call Chairman Joint Chief General Dunford of USA about 48 hours before this strike, because we had the intelligence information that they are trying to undertake some adventure or misadventure, and they are going to strike some targets on the line of control or in Pakistan mainland. But unfortunately, that call was not responded to for the first 24 hours or 48 hours. And thereafter, when Indians struck at midnight, at early morning at about 3 o'clock, the first call in the morning came from General Dunford to General Zubair Hayat asking him to exercise restraint. And they said, I would expect them to rational behavior and a rational response from Pakistan Armed Forces. To which General Zubair Hayat replied that I had called you 48 hours before, and I expected you to call back. But since, General, you have not called back, now this is not the option with Pakistan armed forces not to respond. We will respond, and this response would be very professional. We did that, and we surprised Indians as we had claimed. We did not strike in the early morning or late dusk dawn attack. We went for the midday attack, and we did convey to them that we will respond. So from a strategic victory, from a tactical victory to a strategic response, I think it's a big day from that point of view, and we did convey our resolve to respond should India indulge in any kind of misadventure.
Now, Mr. Awan, you rightfully said that Pakistan's response was well measured. On 26 February last year, India violated Pakistan's airspace and conducted an airstrike. Pakistan's timely and accurate response surprised Indians and exposed their defensibilities. Do you think that was enough for Indian strategists to understand that Pakistan is ready for swift and surprising response?
Well, I think the message has been conveyed well and proper to them by action, not by words. And now I think they have realized, and thereafter there was no response from their side. They did deploy some missiles to support this strike, but then it was conveyed to them and conveyed to the powers in the world that should India strike Pakistan mainland with missiles, the response would come immediately and in a scale much higher than this. So better tell India and advise India not to resort to such a misadventure, which they accepted, and they did not undertake any strike thereafter. Because if they do that, then there is a probability of miscalculation, because the missile strike can be misread, miscalculated, and the response could be which we did not expect both the sides. So to avoid that escalation, the forewarning was sent to the big powers in the world and to India not to resort to such a misadventure. So from that point of view, I think we established our credibility, our capability, and our professionalism, which has been well received by India.
Pakistan's message has been conveyed by action. How diplomatically important Pakistan's decision was to release Indian pilot Abhinandan, and do you think it helped Pakistan to present its image as a peacemaker?
Yes, it did, because we showed a very responsible behavior, one that our army reached on ground where the pilot had bailed out and Abhinandan was there in the custody of a few locals. From there, we saved his life, gave him a professional treatment according to the Geneva Convention, which he himself acknowledged, and then he was given a medical treatment, thereafter released within 48 hours. So this was a gesture to convey to the world that we are not warmongers, we are not seeking hostilities, but since India did something, we had to respond. But here is their prisoner of war. We are not holding him for very long. And that, I think that gesture was very well received. It was a diplomatic victory, I would say, on the part of Prime Minister of Pakistan and overall as a country.
Diplomatic victory for Pakistan. We were in conversation with Major General retired Ijaz Awan. Thank you for your time. Now more in this bulletin. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has left for Qatar on a day-long visit. The trip comes days before the signing of the US-Taliban peace deal in Doha, scheduled for February 29th. In a statement, the Foreign Minister said Khan will meet a mayor of the state of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The ministry said the focus will be on strengthening bilateral cooperation and exchanging views on regional developments. It said Islamabad and Doha enjoy close, cordial ties based on mutual trust and understanding. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to our news bulletin. The death toll in riots during citizenship law protests in India's capital, New Delhi, has risen to 34. The opponents and supporters of the law are facing off against each other, leading to violent clashes. Over 250 have been wounded as Hindu radicals continue targeting mosques, Muslims' homes and shops under the nose of the ruling BJP government. Expressing concern, US Commission on International Religious Freedom asked India to take serious efforts to protect Muslims. In a press release, USCIRF said there are numerous reports of Delhi police not intervening to stop violence against Muslims. The US has issued a travel advisory for India, asking Americans to exercise caution. Calling for restraint, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he is very saddened by the reports of casualties in Delhi.
20 to 25 people started beating me. The rest were standing by as they were watching a show. There were thousands behind them. They kept hitting me. Nobody came forward to save me. Somehow, some people came from the other side. I was like unconscious. I didn't have much consciousness. My clothes were drenched in blood.
The US has sanctioned the head of Iraq's Kataib Hezbollah over a rocket attack that killed an American contractor at a military base last December. In a statement, the State Department said the curbs on Ahmad al-Hamadwi are meant to stop him from carrying out more attacks. It listed Ahmad al-Hamadwi as a specially designated global terrorist. This freezes any US assets he may hold. American citizens are now prohibited from conducting transactions with him. The State Department also accuses the militia of involvement in sniper attacks against protesters in Baghdad that killed over 100 people. In China, another 29 people have died in the new coronavirus outbreak in the last 24 hours, as the toll tips over 2,700. Total cases of the virus have now exceeded 80,000 worldwide, with over 2,700 deaths. While the outbreak in mainland China appears to have waned, it is spreading at a fast pace in other countries. More in this report.
As the rising cases of the new coronavirus ring global alarm bells, governments are stepping up measures to contain the outbreak. Italy has put 55,000 people in quarantine in 11 towns, after deaths surged to 12, while the confirmed cases jumped to 400. Nearly 1,600 are now infected in South Korea, while 13 have died. Seoul and Washington have postponed their joint military drills.
The containment efforts of COVID-19 and the safety of ROK and U.S. service members were prioritized in making this decision. The decision to postpone training was initially raised by General Park Henry, Chairman of the ROK Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Robert Abe Abrams, Combined Forces Command, a United States Forces Korea commander, agreed to postpone the training.
In the Middle East, Iran registered the highest toll with 19 fatalities and 139 cases.
Our assessment is that we will likely see similar situations in other countries in Europe, and that the picture may, in the coming weeks, vary from country to country.
As the cases in Europe surge, Algeria, Brazil, and Pakistan have also reported their first coronavirus cases.
Saudi Arabia has temporarily suspended visas for the Umrah pilgrimage and visits to the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. In a statement, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the suspensions are temporary, but gave no clue when it will end. The ministry has also stopped entry for tourists arriving from states where the novel coronavirus poses a risk. The government said the precautionary measures have been applied to prevent coronavirus arriving and spreading in the kingdom. Saudi Arabia has no cases of the virus, but 7 Saudis are among the coronavirus patients in Bahrain and Kuwait. Saudi Arabia hosts millions of Muslim visitors throughout the year, peaking with the Hajj pilgrimage. France has cancelled a big finale of a carnival in a city that borders northern Italy over coronavirus fears. Mayor of Mediterranean city of Nice said, although there is no case of the virus infection in the city. The carnival in the southern city of Nice started on 15th February and was set for the finale on Saturday. Fireworks in the city planned for Sunday have also been cancelled. France is on high alert after neighboring Italy reported a spate of deaths from the virus in recent days. The French Health Ministry has so far confirmed 2 deaths and 18 infections due to the virus in the country. In Madrid, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has met with Catalonia's pro-independence leader Quim Torra to defuse a political crisis. The long-simmering problem began with Catalonia's failed independence bid in 2017. Both Sanchez and Torra said they were willing to lead the renewed negotiating effort. The Spanish Premier's minority government relies on Catalan separatist party ERC to pass legislation. The survival of Sanchez's government could hinge on the fate of the talks. The Catalans want a green signal to hold an independence referendum in the wealthy northeastern region. They also want amnesty for 9 of their leaders who were jailed or exiled after the failed independence bid. In the U.S., 6 people, including the gunman, have been killed in a mass shooting in the state of Wisconsin. Police say the assailant opened fire at a brewing complex in Milwaukee before killing himself. Milwaukee's police chief said the attacker killed 5 co-workers while no one else was injured in the violence. Police say the body of the 51-year-old gunman was found in the same building. Authorities did not provide information about a motive for the shootings. President Donald Trump offered his thoughts and prayers to the victims.
Before I begin, I'd like to extend my deepest condolences to the victims and families in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Earlier today, a wicked murderer opened fire at a Molson Coors Brewing Company plant, taking the lives of 5 people. A number of people were wounded, some badly wounded. Our hearts break for them and their loved ones. We send our condolences. We'll be with them.
Qatar produces the highest level of plastic waste per capita of all the Gulf states. The government has now set a target to recycle 15% of solid waste by 2022. For this reason, a weekly market has been introduced, encouraging visitors to shun plastic items. More in this report.
Qatar produces 2.5 million tons of solid waste every year. According to official statistics, only 8% is recycled. Qatari people also have the highest per capita CO2 emissions of any nation on Earth. The country's economy is largely focused on fossil fuels. Single-use plastic is everywhere and little of it is ever recycled. In an effort to educate its people on the issue, the government has introduced a Torba market where plastic is banned.
So the motivation is basically seeing where we were, how far we've come since the inception of the market, and then how far we can go. I think there's always room to grow no matter what, and I think that's the motivation. Seeing any difference you make, whether small or big, I think really feeds into that notion.
Instead of selling plastic water bottles, the market has water stations where visitors can rehydrate themselves.
Over here we're setting up this mug library where you can borrow a mug and then return it and we'll wash it, and that way we reduce waste from like plastic and paper cups, and it's been working so far. Every week we get more people coming, and I think it's become like a normal part of the market, so it's really exciting.
People visiting the market also wear badges emblazoned with plastic police. Foreign tourists are very pleased with the initiative.
I was really impressed because in Qatar in particular, sustainability hasn't been high on the agenda for a very long time, and now they're working really hard to do something with it, so it is really impressive. It's good to see those positive moves.
Every year, the market's management enforces stricter environmental measures. Launched in 2016, it now hosts dozens of stalls and attracts as many as 5,000 visitors every weekend.
Stock markets in Asia are trading mixed as investors are cautious over the fast-spreading new coronavirus. Major stocks are losing value as investors are panic selling. Nikkei 225 is trading over 2% lower. Seoul's Kospi has lost over 1% as Bank of Korea kept its policy rate unchanged, defying economists' forecast of a possible cut. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is trading 0.75% lower. Bucking up, Shanghai Composite has gained a fraction as coronavirus-led daily death toll falls. Meanwhile, international Brent crude oil price have fallen by over 1%, falling for 5th consecutive day, lowest since January 2019.